Did the kids come up? I saw we had a couple kids in the back. You don't want to come up today? Come on up. Well, that's coming up all right. What? You hit your nose, and you hit your elbow. Gosh, you are the walking wounded. You know, you guys were once babies. And when you were babies, you were probably about this long, right? You've seen babies. They don't do very much, do they?
I didn't see babies.
You didn't see babies? Never? Oh, okay.
Well, I saw some babies.
Yeah, well, when you see a baby, they're little and they don't do anything very much. They eat and they sleep and you have to change their diapers. That's it. But as time goes on, you change. You guys have been growing, and now I see you've got toys, and you play with them. And hopefully you know how to dress, and you can learn all sorts of things, and you're going to keep changing as you grow up. You're going to stop running at some point. You'll get old like me, and your knees won't work. We keep changing throughout our whole life. You like that, huh? I like that. Well, the crucifix when it has the body of Jesus on it. This is just a cross. But anyway, we change. Today in the gospel lesson we hear about Jesus changing and the disciples seeing the change in Jesus. That he went up on the mountain and all of a sudden he was glowing, like he had a light bulb in him. People could see him. And then two people came and stood by him. We know it was Moses and Elijah, and I'll talk to the adults about Moses and Elijah, but for you guys, it's important to think two people, two witnesses came to talk about his departure and to bless him and to be witnesses to the power of God in him. And he continued to change until he was crucified on the cross, and that gets back to the cross. And when Jesus was crucified, he died on the cross. And when his change, the devil thought he had stopped changing because dead people don't change anymore. But he did, because God raised him up from the dead. And you know what? He's going to come again, and then we're going to change. And we will be like him. That's right. And I make the sign of the cross on me, too. Well, anyway, we all change. We all change. And today, let me get it out. You don't have to go looking for it. You know it's there. It's enough sermon. You're already going for the toys. That one will light up. I think he does. See him blinking? All right, you got your toy. Head back. No more sugar for them. What can I say? In Judaism, you need two witnesses to be sure of anything, and they should be honest. I have a friend who's an Orthodox Jew. When his daughter was married, there were, I don't know, let's say 200 people at the wedding. But he had two very Orthodox Jews, you know, the guys with the curls and the black hats and all that. They were the witnesses that the wedding was done. And so wherever they go in the world, go over to Israel, go to Shanghai, it doesn't matter where they go. If they go to a Jewish assembly, they will recognize they had two witnesses, they're married. Now, we still have witnesses in our weddings, but they had to be very specific witnesses in their tradition. Two very Orthodox witnesses. We have here two of the most Orthodox witnesses, Moses and Elijah, in today's gospel lesson. Now, Moses Tim read that he died and God buried him, and nobody knows where God buried him. Over the years, that led to a tradition among Jews that God just took him up to heaven. And there were people who believed that Moses, like Elijah with the fiery chariot, or like Enoch, had been assumed to heaven. Even though that's not biblical, that was one of the traditions that was current and still is current among a lot of Jewish people. It's enough Judaism for today, other than to talk about how the tradition that these people were so holy because they had done well. Now, Moses was not so holy that he was allowed into the Holy Land, and that's okay. We all have time and places for our ministry. Moses was the one who had been raised up with the gifts necessary to go and stand in front of the Pharaoh and say, "Let my people go." Moses was the one who had been raised up enough to lead the people through the 10 plagues and lead them out of Egypt, to hit the water and see the waters part so the Jewish people could cross over the dry land, and then to close the water up upon the Egyptians. Moses had a unique ministry. He was not perfect. He sinned, disobeyed some commandments of God, and so he wasn't allowed into the Holy Land. But that's okay, because by the time they were entering into the Holy Land, his gifts were no longer needed. They needed someone like Joshua. Joshua, during the Exodus, was Moses' enforcer. Whenever people rebelled against Moses or were presuming to take Moses' place, it was Joshua who would go and explain to them. I had an uncle who did that. We used to call him Uncle Buster. That wasn't his name. But that was his job. He worked for the union, and if you made trouble at a union meeting, you made trouble with the president, my Uncle Buster would go and explain to you not to ever do that again. And if necessary, your knees or your knuckles would be busted. and then you knew. That was Joshua in his day. You caused trouble for Moses. He took problem. And we read about that. When Moses was gathered with the 70 elders in the tent and God came on them. And then there were 2 people outside the tent who started prophesying. Joshua came to Moses, "You want me to go take care of them? You want me to go explain to them that this is not what they should be doing? The elders are in the tent and they're not in the tent. Forget prophesying." And he was told, no, that if they were being led by the Spirit, trust the Spirit. Well, the point of that, one of the points in today's sermon that I want to get to is that you've called a pastor. He didn't come. He's not coming. That can be disheartening. You've got to be getting tired of my sermons. So it's got to be disheartening. You want to have someone who's going to be around for years. I'm already retired. I'm not going to be around for years. I hope I'm around for years, but not working. Yes, it's the reality of the situation. You are going to get a pastor. God has prepared someone for you. God prepared Joshua to be the one to take the Jews into the Holy Land, because it wasn't just going to be following Moses through the desert and fighting with the Moabites and with the Pharaoh and all, but you were going to have to get into some down and dirty fighting, taking the cities, and Joshua was the guy for that. The enforcer was the man to go into the cities and take the land. The Canaanites were going to object, but Joshua was going to lead the people in there. So that was Joshua's role. You have a pastor that God has prepared for you. I don't know who he is. In your committees, deliberations, and prayers, God will lead you there. Trust God. After all, if we can't trust God, we have no reason to be here at all. So trust the Lord. Pray that God will reveal the person he has prepared for this place. And trust that you will be able to find him. Rely upon your prayers. It's a necessary thing. Throughout my life, God has answered my prayers. And I imagine yours as well. He's not going to stop now. That's the first point of the sermon. That's something I think that was topical. When I was originally looking at the lessons, that wasn't where I was going to go, so I'm not going to stop there. I'm going to get back to another thing, the two witnesses. There are two witnesses today in the Transfiguration, Moses and Elijah. I've spoken a little bit about Moses, and you know about Elijah the prophet and the fiery chariot. Two witnesses. This is the Son of God. They heard the voice from the cloud, but they had the witnesses there in the midst. This is the Son of God. There's another point in Luke's writing where we see two witnesses. When the women go to the tomb, they see two witnesses. He's not here. He's risen. He's done what he has said. It was promised to you, and it has happened the way it is promised. Now, those two witnesses were led to believe were two angels, not Moses and Elijah, but the idea that there were witnesses. Well, we are God's witnesses now. Be witnessing to the power of God in our lives, in our community, and in the world, that God has not done with us yet. He is leading us from where we have been to where we are going. Christianity is not about preserving a pure time, whether that's 1521 or 421 or, 1839 or whatever. That's not what we're about. We're not about preserving. That was the ideal time. That's what Peter thought the Mount of Transfiguration was about. Let's build 3 tents so we can stay here and worship. We can be a counterbalance to the temple in Jerusalem. The temple authorities made money. They had money changes and all. They had all sorts of money. You build out 3 temples, one for Moses, one for Elijah, one for Jesus. You got a business deal going on here. Peter was told that's not what the ministry is about. It's not about preserving what happened once, but it's about taking the experience on top of the mountain to energize yourself so you can go down from the mountain and you can go to the city of Jerusalem. Now, I don't know where the mountain was, the Mount of Transfiguration. There is one. If you go to the Mount of Transfiguration, you go on a tour of Israel, they're going to take you to the Mount of Transfiguration. They're not sure where it was. Just letting you know that. Just like, depending on who you are, you go to Jerusalem with the same tour of Israel, they will take you to 2 different places for the garden. Garden of Gethsemane. They're 2 different ones. Nobody's really sure of any of that. But if you go to the Mount of Transfiguration, little I know about it is the Franciscans have a church there. And, Francis is known for preaching to the animals. Well, this Franciscan church has been taken over by hundreds and hundreds of cats. You talk about cat ladies. These brothers have hundreds of cats wandering around the church. So if you go there, be aware that these are cats, and there's going to be a lot of them. I'm not sure that's really the mountain, but could be. The important thing isn't the location. That's not the important thing. The important thing is that here, God spoke and told the disciples, before they went to Jerusalem and watched Jesus die, he told them, this is my son, listen to him. This is the one you've been waiting for. Listen to him. That's one of the problems, We confess that Jesus is the Son of God, but we don't always listen to him. We confess that he's the Son of God and that he came and saved us, but a lot of times then we fall back into legalism rather than listening to him. In each week when we have communion, You hear the words, for you. All that he did in this life was for you. And he still is working for you, sending his holy angels to guide us, preparing people to be the next pastor, having this place prosper for you, for your souls, for the growth of your spiritual. God is active for you. Listen to him. Trust him. In the gospel lesson, what were they talking about? Now, Luke's the only one who talks about that. You know, the other gospels don't say what they talked about, and here it says they talked about his departure. I don't know why the committee translated it as his departure. In the Greek, it's his exodus. To get back to the idea of Moses. The church is not static, but should always be moving forward. Moving forward, happy and rejoicing in the things that have been, but moving forward. Jewish people, they remembered the Passover. They still remember the Passover. They remembered being given the law in the desert, and they still remember that. They did all sorts of things, but they didn't stop there. The disciples remembered the transfiguration on the mountain, and after Jesus was resurrected, they talked about it, but it didn't stop there. The church should not be a museum for what was, but has to continually move forward, trusting that God has a direction for us and a place for us and has prepared someone to lead us there, the right person. While I can be here, I will be glad to be here. I like this congregation. Not thrilled with I-90, but I like the congregation. I will be here. But God has prepared someone for you. You will not be abandoned. As disheartening as it might be that the pastor that you call turned you down, pray for him and his parish that he's currently serving, that they prosper. They're not your enemies. They're brothers and sisters in Christ. Pray for them. And also pray that God will show you the way forward and lead you to where you must go. And then trust him and follow him. Even if it sometimes takes you to places you didn't want to go. Even if it takes you to places where you're afraid. Follow him. Follow him and know that he will accompany you all the way. And there will be witnesses sent by God to lead you. Amen.